Okay, so we're recording again. So, at any point in the supply chain or the value chain or what you have to think about, there are other people who would love to have the contracts you have. Those are your competitors. And you need to do a competitive analysis. And the easy part of this is figuring out who are the current obvious competitors. Okay, so you can look at a lot of industries. I'm just thinking of who's big in Chicago. Um, American Airlines is big in Chicago. Okay, so let's just think about them. Who are the obvious competitors? It's not even interesting. It's United, Delta, and so on. That's easy. Okay, what about suppliers and customers? When you look at American Airlines and you say, okay, who are their major suppliers? Should they have to worry about them? Well, if I was American Airlines, I'd pay a lot of attention to my suppliers and customers. Suppliers, for example, um, you look at American Airlines and you say, okay, who are the major suppliers? Where they get jet engines from? The big numbers, expense numbers, are airframes that they get from Boeing or Airbus, jet engines, and fuel. Okay, personnel is another category. But assuming you've got the airplane from Boeing, and you already have that, or from Airbus, it doesn't matter. You say, if you wanted to compete against American Airlines, who do they most have to worry about? Well, jet engines are a third the cost because you have to replace those, and they're incredibly expensive. But General Electric is a supplier to American Airlines because one of the biggest jet engine companies in the world is General Electric. Okay, between that and its joint ventures. So GE can get the engines at cost. What else can they get at cost? GE Plastics is not only one of the biggest components of the interiors of aircraft, it makes them all out of petroleum. So its cost of petroleum is very low because it buys in such bulk. If they wanted to do jet fuel and add it to their annual purchase volume of petroleum, it would come out pretty cheap. So here you've got 2/3 of the major cost items of operating the airlines, which is the engines and the fuel. GE has those and can beat you all day, every day on both of those. Would they ever compete against American Airlines? Probably not, because their return on investment is more than you're going to get out of the airline industry. Airline industry is weird. It has ups and downs. And with COVID, it had a big down. There was pent-up supply, so it could raise prices by about 50% in the summer season, but it's coming where the summer season is now over. The kids are back in school. So you can't charge people a lot of money for travel when it's not leisure travel anymore. So the market has gone back down in terms of profitability. GE doesn't want to get into that mess. They want to sell aero engines. They want to sell plastics. They don't want to mess with a complex retail thing like an airline. Okay, but you have to worry if you're American Airlines about, do my suppliers pose a risk? The best suppliers are ones that really understand my industry so they can be good suppliers to me. But if they understand my industry well enough, then I have to be very careful about them saying, well, I can do a better job of that. Okay, so you always worry about, in the construction industry, can your suppliers or your customers, can they self-perform the stuff that you're performing? Okay? And if there's a lot of money in it, there's going to be a tremendous incentive to develop the capabilities to knock you out of the market. If there's no money in it, there's no money for them, so there's no incentive, but there's also no money for you. So why are you in that sector if there's no money in it? Well, nobody else wants to get into it. I can have it all to myself is one answer. Yeah, okay. So you got a niche nobody else wants. Okay. That's not promising for the long-term future of your business. So think about your own suppliers and your own customers. Do they need you? Okay. New market entrants. Do you have to worry about people you've never seen before? And the airline industry never had to worry about Southwest Airlines. And this is Southwest. What's the big deal in Southwest? They used to say it's some hillbilly in Texas that operates out of Love Field with stewardesses, that's what we used to call flight attendants, wearing hot pants and go-go boots and giving out peanuts. Why would American Airlines ever have to worry about them? Well, Southwest had a better business model, and its market value exceeds that of American Airlines. The company's actually worth more money because it's got a better value proposition. So American Airlines never used to worry about companies like Southwest or JetBlue, and now they've got to really worry about the erosion of market share that they've experienced because of these new market entrants. So question for you is, who are the new market entrants you ought to be paying attention to? Okay. Now, the other thing everybody needs to worry about is substitute products. Okay. Now, I've been working with Javed for 9 years since we ran the first program in Chicago, and I used to fly out there largely on American Airlines because it's there's lots of service into O'Hare, but the last 2 years with COVID, I haven't been flying out to Chicago. I've been doing it through Blue Jeans. So there's a substitute product. Technology is a substitute for American Airlines. Who would have thought that you had to worry about Blue Jeans if you're American Airlines? But no, they're not getting a passenger to schlep back and forth to Chicago to be live because there's a technological substitution. It's not about me, it's about you. Do you have to worry about the impact of technology on your competitive position? And the answer is, for most of you, yes. Okay? Some of us don't have to worry about that because of what we do, but most of us do. So you need to know what's the substitute product that might knock me out of the marketplace. Okay? All right. Now, once you've figured out the market as it stands today, you have to say, what about tomorrow, next week, next year, 5 years from now? How's the market changing? All markets change all of the time. You cannot give me an example of a market that never changes. There just isn't one, okay? People have looked at this and say, well, we used to teach changing and unchanging markets. Nobody does that anymore. They're all changing markets. You need to know, how is your market changing? That's what's crucial. Okay, now it may be changing technology. The great example of this is Kodak. Kodak used to be a Fortune 50 company. And over the years at the business school, the Tuck School where I teach, we used to get rafts of Kodak executives coming through. But now Kodak is not a major player. It's not a Fortune 500 company anymore. And what happened to changing technology? Well, if you look at pictures of your grandparents when they were little, the photographs were taken on an Instamatic, a little brownie thing that had a cartridge in it with 24 or 36 films individual pictures, you'd have to take that to a developing center, and a couple of days later you get back your prints. Okay? So that changed with electronic cameras, and Sony was the market leader with electronic cameras. And instead of having a cartridge with 24 pictures on it, you had a memory chip, and you could look through, well, if there's 24 pictures taken of you, how many of them do you want to keep? Usually one or two is typical, and then, well, they don't look like me. Well, the camera never lies. They do look like you. But that's not the you that you want to preserve on film. So if you've got a digital camera, you can keep erasing, take as many pictures as you want, take hundreds of pictures, and keep the one you like or the three you like. So it knocked Kodak out of the business. Sony was bringing 20,000 cameras per day into the US market. And Sony went up, Kodak went down. Okay? But now Sony is not selling 20,000 digital cameras a day. Why not? Because people are using a cell phone to take pictures. Okay? So the cell phone is a changing technology that didn't have to knock Kodak out of the market. They were already out, but it knocked Sony out of the market. And yes, there's a few cameras Sony will make. They cost about $800 or $900, but you can get equally good pictures from your cell phone. And I've got what is it? It's an Apple iPhone that takes better pictures than my Canon Rebel XT, whatever it was that I got years ago. This electronic camera was top of the line in its day, and that stays in the closet. If I want to take a picture, I pull out my Apple iPhone, I take a picture, and it's better. I'm sorry, but it's better. So there's changing technology. How does changing technology affect you? Okay, that's an extreme example, but you look at a lot of parts within the construction industry that have gone digital, for example. Architecture is not what it was 20, 30 years ago. Okay, so that's one of the things that you have to pay attention to. Is technology changing in a way that helps your business, or does it make your business obsolete? And how are you going to either shift out of the current market segment into one that's better for you, or how are you going to keep pace with technology so that competitors don't have a more appealing value proposition than you have? Okay, we good? All right. Changing tastes. Sometimes it's not that the technology has changed to produce a better product. It's just that somebody wants something different. Okay? Look at what your grandparents drove. They had a station wagon with wood sides. Okay, what happened to the station wagon? Well, people came out with convertibles, so you want the open air. And station wagons gave way to automobiles. And automobiles gave way to pickup trucks. People wanted pickup trucks because of it. It started with Burt Reynolds and the movie Convoy. Pickup trucks, if you look at the market, it went way up after that because everybody wanted a pickup truck. It was cool to be part of a convoy. So I had a tiny little pickup truck. It was a Dodge D50 that rusted out within a year. But I had a massive CB antenna, and I was part of the convoy. Hey, rubber ducky, this breaker 19 breaker. I do all of that crazy stuff while driving down the highway. And that was pickup trucks. But pickup trucks became much more sophisticated, and they put more car features in a truck. And eventually they closed off the back to create an SUV. Now, SUVs can get really sophisticated. You can spend like $75,000 on an SUV, which is a pickup truck with a back on it welded to it so that you can put more seats in back, and it's got all-wheel drive, and it can go over rocks and on an old riverbed, and it can go up at 30% grade. And you're a housewife in Atlanta. Why do you need all of that ability for $75,000 when it doesn't serve you? But that's where the market went. And the companies and the dealerships were making $10,000 a piece off of these SUVs. So now we've got crossovers. Crossover is it's a car underpinnings, the chassis, the platform is what it's called in the industry. And you put some bodywork on it to give you a little bit more seat height. But basically, you got a station wagon. That's what your grandparents had. That's what you got now. We've come full circle in tastes. You still needed to get from home to school or the supermarket or wherever you got to go or to work. And we used to do it in a station wagon, and now we're doing it in a crossover, which is a station wagon. Okay? It's crazy. But it's changing tastes. And there's changing, whatever the taste is, can affect your business. You've got to keep track of what do people want. Not does it make sense for them to want this, but what do they want and can I give it to them? So some people say the customer is always right. And what that means is the customer's taste preferences are real. That's what's going to determine your business. It's very difficult to change taste preferences, but it's easy to respond to them. So your customers, they want green, they want efficient, they want low energy prices. What else do they want? You got to figure that out, and then you have to evolve your company to give customers what they're willing to pay for. And if that's changing, which it probably is, everything changes all the time, you've got to change with it or you get left behind. And I don't want you to get left behind. I want you on the forefront of that wave, raking in the money and having a market presence. Okay? That's why we're here. Changing economic conditions. Okay, it could be that the tastes haven't changed and technology hasn't changed, but the market's changed. And that's what you're seeing, all three things happening now. But economic conditions are changing. We've gone through a period, it's a pre-recession period is what we're in now. There has to be an adjustment, okay? And so when the recession happens, is it going to be a deep one? Is it going to be a shallow one? Have we had all the recession we're going to see? You've got labor market issues. You've got currency value issues. You've got inflation. You've got foreign competition. You've got a lot of weird things affecting the market now, all at once. So how's it going to be? So what do the changing economic conditions mean for you? Okay, so we'll talk about that in the context of your customers and where are you going. So who are the customers? They're the ones that are going to survive the recession. What is an attractive customer? Well, are they going to be there tomorrow? Are they going to go out of business? But that's not all the things you look at. You know who's a good customer and who isn't. Somebody who values what you have to offer, somebody who pays on time, somebody who doesn't nickel and dime you, somebody who'll give you repeat business, somebody who has high prestige. If we were in person, we could generate a list on a whiteboard where you know who the good customers are. So let's say the good customers are the good customers. Now, let's go to what Wes Stith was talking about this morning at the outset of this program. This is your capacity to serve the customers. Okay, so what you look at is core competencies. Are those appropriate for the customers you're going after? And that's a judgment call for you. And it's a growth trajectory if you need to develop core competencies that you don't yet have. You can buy those in, you can get a joint venture going, you can hire people, you can re-educate yourself. Core competencies, what are you good at doing? Capacity, how big a customer can you serve effectively? Okay, if you're doing construction work and you've chosen Walmart as a customer, I mean, Walmart has 2,400 stores in the United States, and they're big. You better be good in terms of capacity to take that on. And they're not going to give, well, take 5-10 years to do this. No, that's not how it works. You have to get to market as quickly as humanly possible if that's your customer. Okay, so think about capacity. What is your sweet spot? Is it big companies? Is it little companies? What's the capacity you can handle? Okay, and don't ever oversell and leave a customer short because you've oversold a job, you've exaggerated what you're capable of doing. You've got a disappointed customer. That is a ruined reputation in your industry. Okay? Reputation matters a whole lot in construction. We don't go to the yellow pages. We ask somebody else, is so-and-so any good? That's how it works in construction. Okay, now there's the capacity, and then there's your operating strategy. And your operating strategy says, what am I emphasizing? Is it low cost? Is it just-in-time delivery or fast delivery? Is it your ability to accommodate changes? How flexible are you? Is it your delivery? I mean, cost, quality, delivery, flexibility. What's your sweet spot in your operating strategy? And we'll spend a little bit of time in about 45 minutes talking at length about that issue of your operating strategy. A lot of people, when I talk to them, they can't tell me what their operating strategy is because they've never thought about it. But your customer thinks about it. So you need to know, and that needs to be part of your value proposition. But let me come back to that. Okay, how are you positioned? Have you chosen a target market? Okay, you're not the right supplier for everybody. You're the right supplier for certain customers. Who are they? And are you oriented towards that segment of the market? So if the market has thousands of potential customers, there aren't thousands of people who are right for you. It's going to be a very small percentage of them are right for you at your scale of operations with your value proposition, what you have to offer the customers. It's a smaller number. So who is the target market, and are you zeroing in on them, or are you being too general? Okay, I'll give you an example just based on past consulting work I've done. Let me go back 10 or 15 years. The auto companies, and I was working for just about all the major ones at the time, they were redesigning the minivan. Okay, what's a minivan? Minivan is a relatively large vehicle that isn't a performance vehicle, but it's got lots of space in it. So who buys minivans was the basic question all the auto manufacturers were asking, because that's their target market. So who do you think the target market was for minivans? And it turns out to be housewives. And I'm sorry that's gendered, but that was the mini market. That was the target market that many years ago for minivans. So it was women who had a bunch of kids, and you had to take the kids someplace with all their stuff. And you had to pick up their friends too, who had tons of stuff. So interior space was the biggest thing. But then there's questions like, okay, how do I make sure they buy our minivans and not a Chrysler minivan or a Ford minivan or a General Motors minivan or a Toyota minivan? Why would they come to us? Because we're going to ask potential customers, all of whom are mothers, what they want to see in a minivan. So what did they want to see in a minivan? It's cup holders. It's the sliding side door that can be operated from the dashboard. You can close it. But if the kid has his arm out the window, it's not going to get amputated. It's the visibility, rear views, there's all kinds of things. So the auto companies had to get a group of potential customers together to tell them what are the desirable features that would make or break the purchase decision for like a General Motors minivan. Why would they buy that rather than a Ford minivan? So it's identifying the target market and then producing something that they have told you this is going to make the difference in whether we choose you or a different supplier. Okay? You need to do the same thing. How you positioned, who is your target market and what are they looking for? Okay, value proposition. Once you've identified the target market, the value proposition says, you should do business with me because. Because what? Okay, this is the value proposition, and it's unique to your company. If you're not careful, it's going to be shared by a lot of companies, but you're supposed to come up with a value proposition that will say, you should do business with me rather than my competitors, and here's why. What you got going for you? Okay, look at automotive. Why would anybody buy a Volvo? What do you think the value proposition is? And Volvo would tell you it's safety. And that was true 20 years ago. Safety, Volvos were actually safer than other vehicles you could buy 20 years ago. They were the pioneers in putting airbags into cars, rollover protection. So if the car landed on its roof, it wouldn't crush the occupants. Seatbelts for everybody, not just the front driver and passenger, but what about the rear passengers? An engine that if you hit something head on, it would go under the vehicle rather than coming into where you're sitting. Volvo had all of those things worked out in the design of their vehicles, and they were the pioneers, so they got this reputation for occupant safety. Okay, now that became the standard for the industry, so every car you buy is going to have seat belts and airbags and controlled crush front ends and rollover protection and an engine that will slide under the car rather than into the passenger compartment. That became standard, but still Volvo has this value proposition around safety. It's the same as Toyota. If I say Toyota to you, what do you think? Most people think reliability, because in the 70s, Toyota changed its manufacturing process. It said, well, why don't we do zero defects? Okay, that's a great idea. If we do zero defects, why don't we think about how long the car's going to last? And in the U.S. auto industry, we had vehicles lasting about 80,000 miles. It's called planned obsolescence, and you knew the car was going to fall apart at 80,000 miles, and you need a new one. Okay, tires were going to last 10,000 miles. That's what old tires did. So you have 8 sets of tires, but by 80,000 miles, you need a new car. Toyota said, that's crazy. Why don't we make a car that will last the way consumers want it to last? So Toyota's got a car that will go 150,000 miles. So you look at cars today from General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Nissan, they all go 150,000 miles easily. Then you turn it over to the kids wreck the car and you need a new one. But not because it wore out, because somebody wrecked it. Okay, so the value proposition was reliability. And even though Toyota is not significantly more reliable than anything else, it still has that reputation. And it's still part of the value proposition. Okay? So what is your value proposition? When you go in with a sales pitch, what are you telling the customer? You would do business with me because I'm a minority, or I'm a woman, or I'm a Native American, or I'm that doesn't fly as much as saying, okay, here's where we are in your value chain. Here's where we create value. It's unique value. We would love to serve you. Here's what we can do to make your life easier. Here's the value we provide, is another way of saying it. But it's focused on value, not on your diverse status. Think about that. Okay? Okay, the next thing you do, assuming you've got the right target market for you, and you've got a value proposition that speaks to the customer, not you, then you start looking at, okay, what's my business all about? What's the portfolio I have? And that's where you get into, are you putting all your eggs in one basket? Okay? And the reason I say that is, look at this. All products, all services, all customers are not there for you for a period of time. They become relevant when you can appeal to them, and your business is going to grow if you do things right. But after some period, the business drops off, either because the product becomes obsolete or the service becomes old hat, because the service is really good and there's so many competitors come into it that it's not profitable anymore because everybody's undercutting each other's on price. Or people are buying it offshore at a much lower price or whatever. But all products have a life cycle. There isn't a case ever of a product that didn't have a life cycle. All services have a life cycle, okay? And all customers have a life cycle. The customer that was your best customer 10 years ago is no longer, if they're a customer at all, it's not the same customer they were 10 years ago. That's just life, okay? So if you anticipate customers are only going to be with you for a finite amount of time, a product is only going to have so much life cycle, the service is only going to have so much life cycle. If you're doing strategic planning for your company, you need to think differently about what happens when, okay? And that's the portfolio issue, okay? So now I'm going to show you, this is the same diagram, but I'm going to put some numbers in here. But they're not real numbers. That's going to come later in the Clark program. I'm going to give you colors. Red ink is bad, black ink is good, okay? And that's all the math you're going to get from me today. So what this means is just think about coming up with, you're going to get 8A certification, or you're going to develop a new product line or a new service or a new customer. You don't say, okay, I've decided to do this, and then ka-ching, 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 all of a sudden you get the revenue stream, the cash register's going up. That's not how it works. You have to invest. You got to pay yourself while you're coming to market. If you're in the auto industry, that red ink is going to last for 5 years until you start delivering components. Others always have the red ink at the outset. And then black ink once your receipts exceed your spending. That's where the inflection point is. That's when you go from red to black. Money's coming in faster than it's going out. Okay, the break even, conceptually, what break even is when the area of black ink equals the area of red ink. And that's the only calculus I'm going to give you today. Okay, but break even is basically paying back the investment you made in red ink to get you where you are today. So now you're free and clear to make money because you paid back your debt, either to yourself, the equity holder, or if you had to bankroll it through a bank loan or some sort of a loan, family, friends, whoever. You make money the other side of the break even. So what do you do when you've broken even, you've recovered all your development costs? Now you're making money. What do? That's when you buy a villa in Costa Rica. That's when you get yourself a Bentley. That's when you buy yourself all this jewelry. No, that's when you start reinvesting in your company. Okay, because sooner or later the black ink is going to turn to red ink. It always, always does. So if you're investing in the next line of business, the next customer, the next service, what does your portfolio look like? It's not a single product portfolio. Okay, don't do that. That's the kiss of death. Okay, what you want to do is have an ongoing business. And it's going to look like this. So the white line of business, when it's throwing off revenue, you invest in the red line of business. And when that's thrown off, you pass break even, you invest in the yellow line of business. Okay? So this gets you into your long-term planning as part of your strategy. What am I going to do with the company when I'm too old to run it, or bored with running it, or ready to let it go? Are you going to sell it? If you sell it, the more revenue streams you've got, the more valuable your company is. Because people are going to evaluate the value of your company by its future revenue stream, discounted as if you had the money today. That's the value of your company. If I didn't have it, the future dollars are not worth as much as present dollars. Future dollars is going to be inflation. There's going to be a cost of capital that you have to endure getting there. But if you had the money today, it's worth more. Okay, that's called net present value. What if you had the money today? So that's the value of your company. If you only have one line of business, your net present value is very low. Okay, if you have multiple lines of business, it's the summation of the known revenue streams going forward. So if you're going to sell the company, have multiple lines of business. Okay, suppose instead you're going to step back for the business and let somebody else run it. That's good. Okay, but do you want to have one line of business, or do you want to have multiple lines of business? Well, if you're going to live off the revenue stream and have a professional manager run it, you better have multiple revenue streams in place by the time you turn it over to somebody else so that you can live off the profits. Okay? What if you're going to turn it over to your kids? You still need multiple lines of business. But let me give you a warning. You build this business, and your exit strategy is to turn it over to your kids. Of the people who think they're going to do that, how many of them do you think, what percentage are going to be successful in turning it over to the kids? And the answer is less than 60%. Because 60% of kids don't want to have anything to do with your business. Okay, they've seen how hard you worked on it, the evenings, the weekends. It's dominated your life. They don't want it to dominate theirs. Remember, you need a certain kind of personality to be a successful entrepreneur. You got to be a risk taker. You got to be a control freak. You got to be willing to do what's necessary to make the business survive. Okay? And if I were there, I'd ask you, how many of you are just putting in a 40-hour week? And probably no hands would go up. That's just not the nature of entrepreneurial businesses. I never put in a 40-hour week. I still don't, but that's my personality. But if you're operating a business, it's all your waking hours are going to be thinking about that. Your kids may not want it. But if the kids are going to get it, have multiple lines of business that will sustain them through the early years till they can develop their own lines of business to take you into the future. That's the portfolio issue. What you got going for you? Do you have a portfolio that's adequate to take you through the foreseeable future? And many of you don't, okay? Because you're not thinking about that. I want you to think about that. Clark wants you to think about that, okay? Okay, so this boils down to where are you at? What are your sources of competitive advantage? And you have three choices here of competitive advantage. And that's why would the business come to you when it could have gone to a competitor? Okay, one way is that you do it better than everybody else. You're the best in the market. And that's going to be what is relevant to customers in terms of cost, quality, delivery, or flexibility. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next session. I'm going to give you another quick break, okay, to get a cup of coffee or something. Okay, so if you do it better, it means that on the dimension that's most relevant to your customers, whether it's they're looking for low cost, they're looking for high quality, they're looking for just-in-time delivery or quick delivery, or if they're looking for flexibility, you're the best at doing that. Well, you can't be the best at everything for everybody. So that's why you look at what is the customer looking for? What do they want from you? Now, you may not be able to do it better, but can you do it as well as the competition, but then differentiate yourself in a way that's important to the customer? Now, for some of you, your diversity status is the right differentiator. Okay? You say, well, you can buy this from anybody, but we're a woman, Hispanic, Native American, service disabled veteran company. Okay? So you can buy it from somebody else, but you're not going to get all of that credit that you're looking for because of your own customers want you to buy from diverse suppliers. Okay? So you can differentiate, but if you're going to do that, you've got to segment the market to say who cares about certain kinds of differentiation. You're going to have to target the ones that do, and then you're going to have to position your company so that you deliver exactly what they're looking for as a differentiator. Okay, can you do that? Well, some of you can, some of you are going to find it hard because you're in more of a commodity industry. But being diverse can help you in the short run, but you got to deliver in the long run. Okay? All right, now customer loyalty. That's the other thing you can have going for you. And I used to be a purchasing agent. And when I was buying, I'd have to buy a lot of different stuff. But if a supplier was doing a good job, not giving me any headaches, making sure they're on schedule and on budget, I'm not going to be looking around for a replacement for that company. There's other parts of the business that are giving me ulcers. I'm going to spend all my attention there. So if you're doing a good job for your existing customers, there's a tendency to give you repeat business. They're going to keep giving it to you because you don't give them headaches. Okay? So repeat business is the best kind to get. Customer loyalty, it's your business to lose. You don't have to do anything extra for that except keep performing. Okay? So don't let customers down. Do what you say, what you promise them. You deliver on that promise. And unless there's somebody coming in with a much stronger value proposition, you're going to get repeat business. And you're also going to get referrals. Okay, a lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people think it's about the sales pitch. But I used to be a purchasing manager, and I'd have a bunch of people in the waiting room every day want to meet with me. Okay, whether I wanted to meet with them or not, they show up at the office and they want to meet with me. So, will I talk to them? Yeah, I'll talk to them. And they'll come and they'll have a sales pitch. When they leave, what do you think I do? I look at what they've given me as past customers they've served, and they've worked with XYZ company in the same town or someplace else in the country. I'll call up the purchasing manager for that company and I'll say, hey, so-and-so was in and gave me this sales pitch. They say they've done business with you. What was it like dealing with them? Okay? That's what determines whether I even call these guys back. Because if the person says, oh, they sold me a bill of goods, they're really convincing, but they didn't deliver, I'm never going to call that company. So your reputation is the strongest thing you got going for you. Okay? So can you do it better? Maybe you can. Can you do it differently? Maybe you can, maybe you can't, in a way that they care about. Customer loyalty, you got to get in the door the first time. And the problem is, if they've already got a good supplier, you've got an uphill challenge of how am I going to displace a supplier who's good enough that it's not giving the purchasing agent an ulcer right now. They don't want to replace somebody who's good enough. So you think about how you're going about selling. It's not your sales pitch. It's your ability to meet customer needs. Think about that. There's a lot of people, we have sales pitch competitions, we have all of this stuff. We have meet the buyer things, we have all kinds of things. What really counts? Your reputation counts more than anything, let me tell you that, okay? Can you consistently deliver to customers, and are they going to speak kindly of you? Don't screw up a customer if you can avoid it. You'd be surprised who they talk to. All right. So we're at the end of this module. It's 1 o'clock already, so it's 12 o'clock your time. I'm going to give you a 10-minute break, but here's what I want you to think about. Is your strategy clear? Is it well defined? A lot of people start out a diversity education program like this one, and they have a vague strategy. Remember, this is the number one thing that holds people back. And I'll talk to them. I'll say, well, tell me about your strategy. Well, we kind of do this. If somebody's waving their arms, it means they don't know what the hell they're doing. Okay? So I pick up on that right away. Is it clear? Is it well defined? Had you really thought about your strategy? Okay? And you're in a business context. So the strategy needs to address the current business context, because that's what your customers are thinking about. What do I need now? Not what did I need 10 years ago or 10 years from now. They're thinking about right now. Is your business positioned for the future? Had you thought about how the market's going to change, how the technology is going to change, how the tastes are going to change, how the competitive environment, how the economy is going to change? And then are you positioned to be the go-to company, not now, but next year, next month, next week? That's where the action is, because people who are deciding, shall I do business with you or somebody else, we're thinking of the future. Okay? Are you positioned to be what we need you to be? Okay? And again, this is about your to-do list. Now, just based on what I've covered so far, you should have at least 5 items on your to-do list, or you're not thinking about how does this apply to me and how I move forward. That's what you got to do. You got to change with the times. You got to remain competitive. Even if you're competitive now, you're going to become obsolete. That's just the way industry goes. All right. So I've got 12:05. I've got 2 more modules that is going to increase your skill at doing business. But you need to take a quick break. If you need coffee, if you need a restroom, if you need to let out the cat, whatever you got to do. I shouldn't say let out the cat. I never let my cats out because they eat all the birds and stuff outside. But whatever you got to do it and be back at 12:15, not 12:16, okay? And if there are any questions, I'll stick around. Glad to take whatever questions you got. But I'll see you at 12:15 sharp. Chicago time. Okay?
I think you're making good time, Len.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say for the last 2 modules, if you feel like you're a little compressed, just go right from module 3 to module 4.
Okay. All right. Will do.
And then
Module
I'll
3 is a
close.
short one, so I will
Yeah,
go to module 4 after that.
yeah, I remember that one. So um, we can just go from use this as the last break, and then when you're done, I'll conclude things, and then we'll be all set.
Okay, good. All right. Ah,
Hey, Dr. Leonard, can you give me your email address again?
yeah. It's first you can't call me Dr. Leonard. You got to call me Len.
Lynn.
Okay.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. Good. So Java is going to send you all the contact information, but it's either Len or the email works better if you use my formal name, which is Leonard, Leonard, period, dot, whatever you want to call it. Greenhouse. Now, this is the tricky part of my name. I should have changed it years ago. But it's Green. That's the easy half. The second half is where people misspell. It's Halgh at